See you. See you.
I think I go up there. Let me start with the movie. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a tremendous privilege to be here, and after such wonderful speeches already. I'm here to talk a bit about the work that the Business and Sustainable Development Commission has done. We have been very honored to have GSMA and MATS as one of the commissioners. But before I get into that, I do want to start with a movie, which is from Richard Curtis's team, about not stopping halfway. So can we go first to the movie? And if that's not possible, I'm going to reverse the order of things. No? Yes or no on the pardon?
No video, sorry.
Nope. All right, so let me go straight to the content piece, and then what I will do is see if we can get the Don't Stop Halfway video to play at the end of this. So what we tried to do with the work of the Business Commission, which is a wonderful group of 35 different business leaders from across multiple industries and multiple sectors, is we wanted to examine a very simple question. And that was, in a world that is growing its economy, right, every year, right, even through the recession and the global financial crisis, the world economy grew. It also grew in a way that was unequal, and I think we all know that, and I think we've seen the consequences of that. And it's grown in a way that has created tremendous environmental challenges, of which climate is one. It's not the only one, but climate is, if you will, the poster child of the environmental risks we're taking with the model of growth that we have. And we wanted to explore with business leaders how to think about the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, both in terms of the contribution that business could make to their delivery, and in terms of the economic opportunity, the economic prize that getting after these SDGs might actually create. Because it was our view, and the reason that the Business Commission was set up, was a deep conviction that you need to get the private sector fully engaged in the Sustainable Development Goals if they're going to happen, if they're going to scale, if they're going to deliver through the marketplace. But in truth, and we all know it, because most of you, not all of you, but most of you run businesses day to day, the SDGs need to be a driver of growth and productivity and better business if they are in fact to motivate businesses to really play. So we asked ourselves the question, what's the economic prize from the SDGs, and how can business participate? And the next 8 minutes, I'm going to try and give you the headline messages from the work that the Business Commission did, working with MATS and the GSMA team and many others. So here's the headline, which is, when you look at the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and we imagine that they could be implemented over the next now, not 15 years, but 13 years, right? So we've done 2 of the 15 years already. Our estimates were very simple, which is we ran a whole bunch of numbers. We applied the SDGs to the 4 biggest, if you will, economic systems: the food and agriculture system, the urban and mobility system, the whole energy and materials flows, right? And then, of course, health and well-being. And it's not the total economy, so the numbers could be even bigger. But what we estimated was that for business, there is a prize that's worth at least $12 trillion a year. That's just the start. I mean, the numbers could, and I can show you ways in which the numbers could be much bigger, but 12 trillion is a big number. This would, in 2030, be somewhere around 10% of global GDP. So there's a huge economic prize available. Strive made the point that if we just focus on, if you will, the cash returns and we don't think about the human returns, we're missing the biggest issue and challenge that faces us right now, which is how to get people into the kind of jobs and into the kind of employment opportunities that can be transformative for the next generation. And our assessment is that the SDGs are not just worth $12 trillion, but they're worth hundreds of millions of jobs for the next generation of kids that are beginning to come through. So getting behind these SDGs is not just good for business, but it's good for our society as a whole. We, and I specifically, are quite distrustful of all these big numbers. There are huge numbers that always get floated around. $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, and they soon begin to add up. But what we then did was we took our analysis and we broke it down, and we got into some real detail. And what we did was we identified the 60 or so what we're calling SDG hotspots, the markets which will grow 2 to 3 times faster than the world economy over the next 15 years, assuming that we make some good progress on the SDGs. And these are the markets, because we all know that will deliver superior returns over time, because they're just where the growth energy of the world economy has a good chance of crystallizing. Most of them, in one form or another, as I will show you over the next few pages, are tech and mobile enabled. They will not happen without the kind of technology and capabilities that the mobile industry can bring. They also will not happen without good policy and good regulation, right? These things are not just going to be autonomously self-generating. They need to grow up in a good way with good technology, with good investment, and good policy and regulation. Here are just some examples, right? We looked deeply at the mobility systems. What you see on the left-hand side of the exhibit is just our estimate of the economic value at stake, right? The hundreds of billions, not millions, but the hundreds of billions that will come out of delivering a more circular economy, or, if you will, the whole ride-sharing, Uber-type experience. So what we've done is we've put numbers together through the work of the Business Commission, right? And what we've also done is try and identify some of the plays, and we've focused here on the plays that relate to mobile, that could be a huge deal. This is where you see, cubic transportation working in London and working in many other cities, right, to change the way in which consumers and commuters can experience public transport systems. There's obviously the whole Uber and Lyft thing. But what's interesting is the example from Rwanda, where we begin to see a change in the way in which road safety can be delivered through better mobile applications. So we began to think a bit about how to go with the mobile and city hotspots and turn them into real opportunities for your businesses. We did the same in healthcare, right? And these are just a few tiny examples from hundreds of examples that could be out there. And what you see again is the size of the opportunities, vast opportunities in risk pooling, right? Making insurance of one form or another available for healthcare, right, across the world. Finding different approaches to remote healthcare provision, right? And turning those, as a whole set of mobile companies are already doing, into real opportunities. I love the example from Korea, where we're tracking and understanding infectious diseases and how they could actually be, the information around those could be communicated much better to people. And that would then, in effect, improve the way in which we manage the risk of infectious disease. But that's one of 100 examples, and there are probably many of you in the room that are developing specific applications around all of this. Agriculture was already mentioned by the president of NEC, and again, it's a wonderful territory. In a sense, we are on the cusp of an agricultural revolution. We all think about the energy system, and we're all beginning to get used to the idea that the renewable energies, and in particular solar, will be playing out transformatively across the energy system as a whole. In a sense, the agriculture, the whole land use economy, is maybe 10 years behind where the energy system is today. But what we're beginning to see is a tremendous opportunity to change technology sets upstream in not just the large farms, but in smallholders as well. And this is where, and we'll hear from Aaron later about some of the investments that Grey Ventures is making, but we are seeing huge improvements through digitization, through the digital transformation story upstream. But that's not enough, because what we need to do is to transform the entire value chain, right, all the way through from, I prefer looking at it from the consumer backwards, all the way through to the producer. At every step of it, there are immense losses in the performance of the system. And those losses are ones that have huge environmental consequences. Food waste, if you just took all the losses associated with food, both the food that we throw away and the food that gets lost in the system, it's roughly the 4th biggest country in terms of, or the equivalent of being the 4th biggest country in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So fixing that has a huge environmental benefit. Fixing it also has a huge social benefit, because when we talk about the millions of children that go to sleep each night without having a decent meal during the day, go to sleep hungry, that in part is caused by the massive losses of food throughout the entire system. And again, these are not just, if you will, social problems to be solved, and that is where I start, but these are huge markets to be created and transformed. And in every single one of them, the mobile industry has a central role to play. There is, I think, no other single industry. When I look at the work of the Business Commission over the last year and a half, there are many industries that play within a specific piece of this puzzle. They can transform or help on the healthcare side. They can help on the education or energy. There is no other industry that plays as powerfully, as compellingly across the board, and where the opportunity to marry purpose with profit is as powerful as in the mobile industry. Now, that's what this analysis says, coming from GSMA's own work. It argues that there are 4 particular areas in which the mobile industry has a huge role to play. I'm going to argue a little bit with the GSMA analysis, because I think you have a huge role to play across absolutely everything, and there are ways to do it, which is, in a sense, the message of the Business Commission. There are ways to do it that can make good returns at the same time. Now, I'm going to come back to the slide of the child in a moment, but I want to talk about what we think the Monday morning test looks like. What do you do? It's all very well being confronted with these inspiring ideas and the potential to marry purpose with profit, but what does one actually do? Right? And here are 4 suggestions. 1, look at the 60 hotspots that we've identified and think about which ones are closest to your own business and where could you get going, right? We all need to take one step, right? If everybody in this room, everybody took one step on one of the hotspots, my goodness, what a way we would create. So get going with one piece of this. Follow what Matt has been saying and think about how do we measure the impact that we're making in terms of the work we do in the, if you will, the SDG space. If we don't measure it, we won't manage it, and we won't create the scale that this industry uniquely can do. So get after the bottom line and the measurement of this whole agenda. There are some basics on human rights and on environmental footprint. You'll hear this from other people. You don't need to hear it from me. But if you don't get the basics right, then all the upside doesn't quite count as much as it could do. So there are still areas in which this industry, as with every industry, I think Strive put it perfectly. We're all works in progress, every single one of us. Right? So let's just keep on working this stuff. And then think about whether you want to, in a way, what we said is join the Better Business movement. We are, as the Business Commission, inviting people, we're not asking you to join or to sign up or to pay anything, but just join with us, right, in promoting this agenda and showing how you can marry purpose and profit. Now, if I go back one slide, I can do that, and if I can. This is Emmanuel. This is a child who works in the fields in Côte d'Ivoire, right? What you may not know is that Côte d'Ivoire is the largest supplier of cocoa in the world. It's about 30 to 35% of global cocoa production, right? It's bigger in the cocoa industry than Saudi Arabia is in the oil industry, just to give you a sense of scale. It's over 30%, right? There are 1.2 million children who are working in the industry in Côte d'Ivoire, right, in unacceptable conditions. Almost all of them should be in school, right? Many of them are not registered. Many of them are in forms of modern slavery. Over half, by the best estimates we can come up with. Every single one of us in this room, unless you're allergic to chocolate, has probably eaten chocolate in the last month, which has been sourced from Côte d'Ivoire, involving child labor, working in an unacceptable set of conditions. Now, just imagine for a moment if we took all the assets that you guys have, right? The ability to drive farm-level productivity that we heard about from the president of NEC, the extraordinary capacity to do what's called conditional cash transfers and make sure that they're monitored properly on the back of whether kids go to school or not, and making sure those payments come through. The way in which you can actually help drive a real change through COPA and other systems into the availability of energy, and from the availability of energy through to providing light at night for kids to be able to go and do their homework. Your ability to drive transparency through supply chains, end to end, right, from the farm all the way through, on the back of the technologies that you guys are right at the heart of, right? And most fundamentally, the ability of this industry to make people dream a bit, to expand people's hopes and horizons. Because if there's ever an industry that's been able to do that right down in the village, it's your industry. And it's an industry and it's an impact about which you should be astonishingly proud. So what I would say to you all is, there's a multi-billion-dollar industry called the chocolate industry out there. It's worth tens of billions of dollars annually, right? Put together the elements of a solution which you as the mobile industry can do, and you will be at the heart of transforming the cocoa industry. They know they need to change. They absolutely know that they need to change. They cannot do it without you, right? And you can participate both on the back of purpose and on the back of profit. That's the mobile industry at its best, delivering the SDGs and transforming the world. I'm going to stop. I don't know if a movie's going to show up or not, about not stopping halfway. Is there any chance of a movie? So in the absence of that, the great news is that I'm going to invite Greta and Aaron up to the stage. Please welcome both of them.